Oh man, I'm tired tonight. I don't have any stinky fruit, so I always wonder what I look like with a shaved head. And I shaved my head one time.
I was always told when I was younger, if you wear hats, you'll go bald. I now believe it.
I want to shout out Dawn and Lucy from the Dollar General over near my house. I got them to give us a couple of subscriptions. I promised them I would give them a shout out. So ladies, thank you all very much.
And I would like to shout out Peggy, who makes my sausage McMuffin at McDonald's. No. A special shout out to Mary McQuain, guys. She came over from our Frizzy's Finds videos, which is odd that somebody could actually stomach me in two separate places. So special shout out to Mary for coming over to Finders Flippers.
Stir, you got anybody?
I don't have any shout outs tonight.
Stir is he's a blooper making machine, my friend.
If I was forced to shout out somebody, I guess we've shouted about before, but consistently, they're one of our biggest commenters and biggest supporters. I have to give a big shout out to Finders Flippers. I mean, we know we've got at least one fan out there, so thank you.
Takes a lot of pressure off my mom.
Actually, I should shout out Mom too, because I know she watches it, so thanks, Mom.
Shout out to my mom as well. Love you, Mom.
I have put the pressure on my other three kids to be on the show. My son was like, no way. My son's like, there's no way I'm being on your show. Shout out to my son who refuses to be on the podcast. Then we have another one.
Consignment, right?
Yeah, so it was a consignment.
Oh no, he forgot consignment chats again. Ladies, there you go. I got to see the consignment chats episode. I think it's 192. Is that correct?
Who knows? They put out like 12 videos a day.
Stuart, first of all, thank you for having my back.
We've thrown enough darts at you to that point. We've got through the air.
And what was their names again, Stuart?
Let's see. It's Holly. Oh, man.
I was just going to try to put you on the spot.
By the way, Wes, I never finished her name. Smalley, Samantha, and Livy.
I am going to say, Ken, you're already too good for us. The lighting, you have solid lighting. Your microphone works. You got a good backdrop.
I try.
I mean, it's too good for us.
That's the goal. Level up, right? Hey, I had to set up like Stuart. It was like a bunch of shelves and shoes in the back before. That's how it's all started.
Did Ken inspire you to stop wearing a hat, Johnny?
No. It's too late. See, he said that he stopped wearing a hat because he needed to let his hair relax. Well, I never did that. It's too late. The widow's peaks are too aggressive. It's hats from here on out.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Finders Flippers Resell Podcast, episode number 32. Gentlemen, how you doing this evening?
Man, doing awesome.
This party train is continuing again tonight with another awesome guest coming on. We have just been blessed these last couple of weeks with some awesome guests. Ken the Hustlebee coming on. We're talking sneakers, guys. I don't know that we have ever brought up footwear on this channel before, but it's happening today.
I don't know if we ever have brought up shoes, have we?
I don't think so.
We talked about the pair of high heels that you sold that broke, Johnny. That's the extent.
Oh, yeah.
That's the extent of our footwear discussions, I think. So.
That makes sense why we've never talked about it again.
In our little friendly competition with the Full-Time Flippers podcast, we're at 150. We're at 143. They're at 127. So we've maintained like this 15 to 16 subscriber lead over them. So we gotta keep the pressure on.
Come on, subscribers, help us out. We're in a competition with the Full-Time Flippers. Well, we're going to go ahead and bring Mr. Ken Gaetano, the Hustlebee, in. Ken, we appreciate you coming into the Finders Flippers Resell Podcast tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
For sure.
Ken,
I haven't met Johnny.
Yeah, how's it going, man? Nice to meet you.
Hey, what's up, Ken? Long time no see.
Stuart, how are you?
I don't guess I've seen you since the Camp List Perfectly.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So I'm
Ken,
going to
where's your
go ahead.
Cincinnati hat?
I didn't wear it. I actually stopped wearing a hat to give my hair a rest this year. So.
I'm going to hit you right off the bat, Ken. Here you go. I'm going to give you a look here.
Oh, so
Tell me about these.
They're not Air Force Ones. I forgot their name, but I don't have a clue.
You don't have a clue. Well, I got these at a discount store back in the fall, and they're yet to sell. So last fall. So I've had them a while, but they're yet to sell.
So Ken, do you work exclusively in sneakers or just all footwear in general?
No,
or?
I would always say like sneakers has been a big thing for eBay, but mainly when they launched their focus category about I don't even know when. I'm terrible with dates, but when they launched it, so that kind of have been the focus, because originally when they really tried to get the market share back from GOAT and StockX, they did 0 fees for sneakers over $150. So I went all in on that.
Yeah.
Obviously nobody wants to pay, $15 on a $150 sale.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like mainly like why the sudden shift of kind of like me or what we have been selling. But really mostly I would flip, athletic wear. I would say if it has a Nike swoosh or a Jordan brand, it's just a brand that I love personally. So I'm more well versed with it. So I would say athletic apparel and sneakers.
Do you do a lot of retail arbitrage then, or is it mostly?
Yeah, I mainly did retail arbitrage. When I started, I kind of sold some used stuff based on just collections and stuff like that when I bought collections. But really mainly when I found Glenn, the Hustler Hacks on YouTube, he was doing retail arbitrage on Ross, Burlington, and I've only known of Nike Outlet. I didn't know that there was such thing as Ross and Burlington back in 2017. So that's when I found like, okay, this is fun. And that was kind of like my treasure hunt. I just went to as many stores as I could.
So you had the Hustler Hacks to kind of learn from, but kind of talk about, Kenny, because you were on my Slim Flippers about a year ago. Kind of talk about the other things that impressed you as far as I'd asked you, I think your top 5 people that helped you, but you had talked about some authors. Could you kind of talk about them and the books that go with them?
Well, I think a lot of it was, like I was at a point when I was really trying to find, a way of living that I enjoyed the most. At this point, I just moved here from the Philippines, and I was working at a call center. So that was kind of like, it was fun for a while until like I couldn't really, move up in the company. And I was like, I've always been an entrepreneur in my life. This was actually technically my first job when I got here. So that was the challenge that I wanted to take on, like what kind of business that I want to take. So I really went on like, deep kind of like, just diving with different authors. So I really stumbled upon like the 2017 Flip Challenge with Gary Vee. And during that time, Gary Vee was interviewing just different, authors and stuff like that when he had his kind of like live show or something like that. So that's when I really started looking into Seth Godin, author of The Linchpin, The Purple Cow. A lot of them have been heavy marketing oriented and how to capture your audience, how to build a brand. That was one thing. Simon Sinek was the other one. At this point, I was like, what am I doing with my life? And at that point, he had a book called Start With Why. So figure out why you do things. So those were very big. Tony Robbins was one of them. So a lot of self-development book. And then later on, really dove into, I forgot his name. He was the trainer for Michael Jordan. And he had the book, How to Become Relentless. So the pursuit of greatness and stuff like that. So that's kind of like really what I leaned on towards as far as, finding knowledge and try to develop myself. Because at this point, right after college, like what do you do to develop yourself? How do you absorb knowledge? And at this point, yes, I was absorbing knowledge through the Hustler Hacks YouTube channel. Mainly, that's all I watch. I actually watch all his videos, even when the ones that were way, way back. I just wanted to figure out, like, see his growth. So, yep.
So, what year did you come here from the Philippines, Ken?
It was 2013. Yeah, 2013 or 14, something like that. Yeah.
And you mentioned you had done a lot of entrepreneurial stuff in the Philippines. So what are some of the kinds of things that you did when you were there?
Yeah, so back then, one of my first business ventures was my mom's cousin is a bulk buyer for fruits in the Philippines, tropical fruits, so banana, mangoes mainly, and he would export them. And we had this fruit called durian. I don't know if you guys are familiar. It's the stinky fruit.
Stinky fruit, yeah.
Yeah, they call it the stinky fruit. It's very popular in Asia. So a lot of what he bought was actually for export. And then he had some issues for like the second class. And he offered me, was like, hey, I'll sell this to you at cost. So I said, okay, let me do that. He said, how many you want? I said, how many can a truck, load? Well, at this point, I was like probably like 16. I didn't know how big the truck was, right? And apparently one truck could hold 1.5 tons. And it got unloaded in our garage, and my mom and dad was like, what have you done? And at that point, I just literally recruited two of my friends that I went to church with, and I was like, hey, let's you want to start making money after school. And we would literally park at street corners or kind of like busy area where they had like restaurants and stuff like that. So we would try to catch people leaving from the restaurant and try to like buy fruit. So that was my first initial entrepreneurial journey, and after that I was just hooked. So I that was like the biggest kind of like, okay, I can flip things. That was like the fact, like that's when I learned costing, like what's my margin and per kilo. We were selling everything per kilo there. And so that was it. And then that led me to go to business school. So went to the university, major in entrepreneurship. It was back then, it was probably, even in my city, it was I think we were in the third or fourth program, class of program, because it was always been management, marketing, the traditional. And when I heard entrepreneurship, it's like, oh, that's different, right? And that was like a word that, a young kid was like, okay, that's different. So I just wanted to be different. And that's when I fell in love with the business writing and all just the different, because at this point we were literally dissecting like just different business models, the KFC, the McDonald's, the Coca-Cola, and just like Apple. Those were just the big things that we dived into. So after that, I'm a big fan of cars. I love cars and stuff like that. So I wanted to, race cars. And I needed money at this point. So I was like, okay, we need to make some money. So then my dad was actually helping me, buy my car and, buy tires and stuff like that. And he was pretty much like, hey, like this is getting really expensive, because at this point I was racing. I was really competitive racing. So you got to figure it away. I was like, that's
was
when
you driving, throwing stinky fruit out the window?
Yeah, this one, right? That's when, and during this time I was in the university. My deal with my mom was like, we'll pay for your college. You just have to finish, get your bachelor's degree. So she was the one that was very big on, getting all the knowledge I could get. That way, when I step out in the real world, I'll have some stuff to take. So I made a car. I created a car shop because I started winning. So I was like, oh, this is good branding. So that was literally my first kind of like take on branding. And I was like, this happened between 18 to 21. And so I had a car shop. But at that time I had to make a business plan for the university I went to for my bachelor's degree. So I had a coffee shop that was written on our junior year, and on our final year we had to implement it and sustain it for a year to graduate. So me and three of my buddies went on together. So I had a car shop and a coffee shop then, and that was literally like the last stint of business before I left the Philippines, and kind of like sold it all literally before I left.
I thought that's how you were going to tell us you started Starbucks.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, Starbucks is a thing already. We were just trying to compete. We were undercutting Starbucks. That's what was the business plan. Come to our shop because we're cheaper than Starbucks.
But yeah, going back to the fruit in the garage. I mean, I have 5 bananas in my kitchen, and like fruit flies are everywhere. So
Mhm.
were there like fruit flies like just everywhere in the garage?
Yeah, it was. Well, I had to get rid of them be fast enough, right? Before
Yeah.
fruit flies. I mean, because like fruit flies means like it's ripening already.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was the goal. And I actually learned how to kind of like open them up and freeze them because you were able to freeze them. And I actually sold them frozen because people didn't want to deal with peeling them up, so they just want ready to eat. So that was a different product I offered off of one raw material.
Do you miss any of those jobs, Ken? That kind of grew who you are. Do you miss them?
I think, I mean, there's a part of me, but I think the big challenge, I mean, I would always say the double-edged sword for my personality is I want something new and I want to experience something new. And I always believe that what I did in the past helped me to get to the next level.
Mhm.
So that's why for the longest time, like I've always kind of like felt bad because I felt like I wasn't finishing something and I wasn't completing something. As soon as something gets to like a good level and things are going good, like my mind is just like, I'm not a maintenance guy. That's what it is. It's like, okay, this is where we're at. It's like I have to get onto the next challenge. I feel that's what makes me feel alive. Yeah. So when me and my wife decided to get married, we were like, kind of like the life in the Philippines was kind of pretty much set. My family, all our families are, my family were like just, well connected. And I've always had a chip on my shoulder, like, wait, did I just kind of like make it here because I had my parents backing. I had my uncles back, like I felt like my family was a huge supporter for me. And that was kind of like a chip on my shoulder. It's like, I wonder what it is to go to a different country. And I've always seen America as kind of like a vacation spot. I've been coming back here at least every year since I was 12. But a lot of that was tourist stuff, like Disney World, all the tourist stuff. I was like, I wonder what it feels like to live here. And it was either here or Australia. And my girlfriend's JC's family is in Maryland. All of her family is there. So she just went home to the Philippines where I met her to get a degree, to go to school. And that's when we figured out, it's like, okay, well, it's kind of like an easier path here because also for all my paperwork and stuff like that, she was already an American citizen. And, it would be easier for me to get a job right off the rip. And actually she could she had a job for at first because I couldn't work yet because I was waiting for my Social Security. So that's kind of like where we kind of like, okay, let's try here in the States. And then my dad knew somebody, is a good friend of his here in Cincinnati. He worked for Procter & Gamble, has a huge house, and he's like, hey, why don't you just stay with me until you get your feet together and find your apartment and stuff like that. So yeah, that was 10 years ago.
When you first come here though, Ken, how nerve-wracking was that for you? Because you didn't know anybody.
No.
You didn't know really anything. So
yeah,
stepping out on that leap of faith, that's a big step.
I to be honest, I felt the most alive then. I had 2 suitcases and came here and I was just like, okay, this is it. And a lot of that was just adventure. And I always say, like, man, how did I was able to like figure that out? And I always attribute it to when you have less experience and when you have less knowledge of what could go wrong, you're way more courageous. So that's what I felt like. It's like I felt like invincible because like I just had a bachelor's degree was able to run 2 businesses at the same time. And at one point I had 15 people under my payroll, and I was like, okay, like this is good. Like, how much worse would it be if I work a job? At this point, I've never, I said that was my plan. My plan was to get a job that I wouldn't really get stressed, because then I had, had break even point. I had rent to pay, I had payroll to pay. I was like, how fun would it be that after 5 or after I clock out, I don't have to worry about it. So that's when I became kind of like a kid again, right? Like I start, like playing video games. I start, going to the mall. I start shopping, because at that point when I had my business, I was a grown man. That's what I felt like.
Obviously you had that entrepreneurial spirit before. How did that come over here, and how did you start to become, what you've created today?
So when I was working that job, and it was kind of like like I loved the part of being able to, be with a community of kind of like people, right? My coworkers kind of like automatically became my friends. So I kind of like, it felt like I had so many relationships that I could build and foster during that time. So I was really at the bottom of the position, and then worked my way up to become a sales trainer and a supervisor. And during this time, I had like 20 people under me. And this was kind of like where I really fell in love with kind of like helping other people. I felt that when I accomplished goals, it was fun. It was super fun. But when I helped somebody accomplish goal, it was more fulfilling. That's when like the difference of just being happy and being fulfilled, that's really the kind of like the realization that I got. And then during that's when I was like, okay, there's gotta be more, right? and during this time I've worked, and I've always wanted to have my own free time. And more, the longer I worked there, the more kind of like choked I felt that I had to be there at a certain hour. I had to log X amount of hour. There were just times that I just had to log in my computer just to be able to get 8 hours. You know what I'm saying? Because like if not, I'll get ridden up the next day. And I'm like, man, this, and at that point there was just no room to grow. They literally told me like, hey, we can't push you ahead anymore, because I've always asked for like a review. I always was performance review. And I said, okay, what's next? And then that's when I said like, there's actually like 4 or 5 people senior to you. And I'm like, wait, I thought this was a performance, growth path. And that's when I said, well, they literally told me like, well, like she's been here for 8 years and she has 2 kids and she has a family to feed. It wouldn't be right if you go ahead of her, and you're just newly married. That's when I was like, this is corporate bureaucratic politics. I didn't hang out with them. I didn't know them longer than everybody else knew each other. So I came home from a vacation one day and I was like, I'm out. And they said, what do you mean you're out? It's like, I quit. It's like, they told me, it's like, you got to put in your 2-week notice. I said, what's a 2-week notice?
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you like 2-week notices?
They hated me more. And after that, it was just the worst. I actually lasted for another week. But it started because with my experience with cars, and during this time, I kind of like a lot of my friends in the Philippines a lot of my good friends start asking me to buy stuff for them, right? Because the shipping, for example, like even if you bought something from Nike.com, there's no way that you can get that over to the Philippines. So, we've all experienced the forwarding companies, right? Like we ship it to like a weird number, right? In New Jersey or Miami or Portland, something like that. Those are forwarder companies. So I didn't know those things existed. So I became that to my friends. It's like, there was one time like I was just buying a bunch of like my friend, one of my friend's uncle wrecked his like Mini Cooper, and it was cheaper for me to buy it from Europe, send here, and then ship it from here to the Philippines, just because of like just the import policy and taxes relationship. Like US is friendlier with the Philippines than Europe to the Philippines, so they have just different tariffs. So I was basically like doing logistical shipping for people, and it was 10 to 20% markup, whatever the price is. That was kind of like, it was literally a profit, but it was, in a way it was kind of like drop shipping, right? Like I was just getting the parts. And I was like, okay, I can get into cars. And during this time, one of my good friends was like, he had like some brake issues in his car, and I was like, I can't believe that there's no shop that could fix this quickly. It's just, he just needed new rotors. It was grinding. I was like, okay. And that's when I came up with a business idea. I was like, oh, we need to come up with a mobile brake shop. So I researched the whole United States. There was one during that time in Dallas, and they kind of like had an entrepreneurial start from one fleet. Now they have 12 fleets during that time. I was like, oh, so we literally go to your house after you work. We'll fix it in your driveway, and by the time you're done with dinner, you're ready to roll the next day. So you don't lose, the inconvenience of having to drop off a car, probably having to get to ride to your work. So we started it. It was going, and then I had a partner that literally pretty much got cold feet and backed out. And during this time, I literally just ran out of money, and I was like, okay, it can't go because, startup, I had to buy tools and all that stuff. We had clients, at this point, we were breaking even, but without like marketing money to get advertising out, which is a struggle, right? You can't rely with word of mouth at this point, because not everybody needs what I realized, right? You don't need a brake job every month. So after I fix his West car, like now I gotta find Johnny's and Stewart's. Like that's actually harder than I thought it was, because you all have your favorite shop now, right? Because at this point it's the pain of convenience, and during this time Uber wasn't a thing even. So like trusting other third party, right? It was very hard during that time. So we pretty much shut down, and I said like I need a break. I wanted to go back to the Philippines for a vacation, and that's when I said like, and during this time I had like 150 pairs of shoes already, because all my bonus money went to buying sneakers that I've never, I've always dreamed of when I was in high school, in college, and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? Like, let me sell off some of this, because I bought some on eBay. I was a buyer on eBay. I was like the low baller on eBay. I was best offer. I was just sending best offer.
What year are we talking about right here?
This was 2017, literally like, so this was 2016, Christmas 2016.
Okay.
And this is almost like, okay, I need to go home for Christmas. And actually, let me sell some of this back to eBay. And then I was like, you have your purchase history there. Literally, it was so easy to find. Like, wait, I bought that for $200. I just sold it for $350, and I sold enough. I think I sold like 20 pairs, and I bought a ticket to the Philippines. I paid for my car payment and my apartment rent for a month, and I didn't think about it. I was just kind of like, I need a refresher. And then once I came back, literally Uber opened in Cincinnati, and Gary Vee was saying, like, you got to find some side hustle to support your real hustle, or when you're building a business, you have to find a way to just supplement your income to pay for your expenses. And during this time, I had a Mercedes-Benz, and it qualified for Uber Premier, so I was just getting paid more, and I literally would clock in at like Friday, and then like I only work weekend. I only needed like $500 every week to pay my bills at that point. So I did that, and then that's when the light bulb went off, and I was like, wait, like, did I just pay my rent last month with sneakers that I bought on eBay and resold it, right? Whether it was profit or not, right? Like, I was able to run through some revenue and get money. And I was like, oh, that's it. And that's when I literally started YouTubing and came across Glenn's article on how he paid his student loan selling items on eBay. And I was like, oh, that's real money. I think it took him like 2 years. I was like, that's real money, because I was doing, if I only need $2,000 a month, I was like, I could survive off this, because he paid his student loan. And I was like, and that's when I just went into research mode, went into learning mode, and I started my LLC March. Like literally just Google how to open up an LLC in the US or in Ohio. And it was actually pretty easy in Ohio, because I didn't have to do anything much. I just had to pay once and stuff like that. So that's how it started in 2017. And after that, we just went all in on kind of like retail arbitrage, basically.
Well, Johnny and Stuart, what I like about Ken is he says yes to opportunity. I had sent him a message about a year ago to join me on the Slim Flippers, and it was like 10 minutes later, he's like, boom, yes. Mm-hmm. And here he is again tonight. And Ken, we appreciate this dive into your story. You have a great story for sure.
Yeah. So Ken, tell us a little bit. I think I first met you at that first Boss Resell Remix. What was that, 2020?
Yeah. Was it 21, something like that, post-COVID, right?
2020 or 2021, so 3-4 years ago. So I know at that time, I'm sure you were doing well, but nothing like you are now with all your association with eBay and everything. So what's the last 3 years been like to grow from where you were, say, 4 years ago to where you are now, and a little bit about your association with eBay? 'Cause we've actually seen you on commercials for eBay, so.
Yeah,
about a week ago. I was like, what is this?
They actually launched it, and I wasn't able to talk about it until then. And then I actually just posted one. Now today was kind of like my release day for stuff.
Like for Ken or something. Yeah,
I would say a lot of kind of like the growth of the business really happened around COVID time, right? When So every year since 2017, since COVID, we've always doubled. And I would say my proudest moment was really our first year, because we went from my eBay store from basically zero sales, not as a seller, to becoming a seller. And we ended the year with $127,000 in sales. And that's when eBay emailed me. It's like, yo, basically congratulating me that I was top 10% in my category at that time, with the sporting goods category. So I was like, okay, that was that's all I needed. I was like, okay, I can get to places. And then ever since then, we've always doubled until when was 22. We've doubled every year until 22. 22 was unique because that's when I actually signed up partnership with Whatnot, and that's when I pretty much traveled with them for their sneaker events with SneakerCon. And so during this time, it was double. I had an eBay store running and Whatnot going on. Pretty much a lot of the revenue happened on Whatnot, but the growth it's I would say kind of like, if I'm looking at it, it was kind of like a lot of it had to do with just inventory. Biggest struggle for me personally was really capitalization. And if you guys remember back when PayPal had PayPal capital loans, that was the biggest help. That was the biggest help for me, because I mean, still to this point, like I don't have a credit history, because like they look at me, I'm 10 years old. My social, right? My social is 10 years old, and I've only held one job, and as a business owner, it doesn't really weigh that much for banks. So PayPal Capital really helped me, use that. And throughout this, it started in 2018 through my Instagram with the connection of eBay. They were starting their seller influencer program or something like that, and this time we went to eBay Open. This was the first time we went to eBay Open, and when they knew I was going, they're like, hey, can we get an interview with you? So that was like my first face to face, with somebody in eBay. Shared my story, and then in 2019, that's when they reached back out again. This is when we were hosting classes now, like, or your breakout sessions. So this was all eBay expense paid, everything like that. So that's when I knew that, because what I did with my Instagram, if you go scroll way back, that was literally all my just milestones, my journey. It was pretty much, we made a post daily, what we sold what was our most expensive item, a rainy day. I was just like random posts, because I've looked at it as like, one day I'm gonna look back and I want to make this my photo album, because that's how like Instagram came about. Like, this is the digital photo album. And very nostalgic. Growing up, I've always had a photo album, and this time I was like, I didn't bring it. I don't have any. I said, I'm gonna create one. So that's kind of like how the Hustlebee became. And then, over time, then when, that's when I started finding out, oh man, there's like a community behind this. Then you start, during this time, it was like Reezy Resell. So Reezy was really big. Hustle a Home Mom, and those people, those are two accounts that are really followed. And then with Glenn Hustler Hacks, those were like the people that I really followed. So that's kind of like how it evolved. And in being with kind of like the seller community, being heavily involved with sneakers, which is under eBay Fashion, that's kind of like where they kind of found me. Because I don't know if you guys have seen most of their commercials before was like always with all actors. Everything was actors. And if it was either seller spotlight, right? Like only all sellers, right? And that was kind of like broadcasting to us. This ad that we just did recently, this was broadcasting to the buyers. And so yeah, like I was blessed enough that they picked me. And we're doing, we've done the eBay Fashion for one, and then the other ad that was ran was for the government relations, because back in May, we went to the Capitol Hill to pretty much fight for eBay sellers about all the legislative changes that could affect us heavily.
You're on a whole nother level, man.
Trying.
And it is nice to see eBay putting some resources. I mean, really, previously, about the only advertising you'd really see from eBay was on the auto side, almost.
Yeah,
eBay Autos was
heavy.
Very heavily, but nothing else.
Yeah, and then I think the market has shifted a lot too. That now pre-love is being in the forefront. To be honest, it's like the categories that are doing well on this focus category are like, when I say focus, it's like sneakers, luxury handbags, watches, trading cards, right? Obviously trading cards is like its own gigantic, world. But now on fashion, pre-love is the forefront, because now they bring in the sustainability. And to be honest, besides that messaging, I think a lot of it has to do with where the economy is. I used to be able to sell $300 Jordans easy, but now buyers would prefer a $150 used Jordans, something that's more affordable. So that's kind of like where the market for fashion is, what I'm seeing as a whole.
So Ken, not to put you on the spot, but we watch a lot of, my wife and I watch a lot of like Whatnot shows, and you talk about Glenn, and I buy hats from him.
Oh, nice.
Almost weekly. I love his hat shows. But we watch all these, like you mentioned, like luxury handbags and stuff like that. And there's so many people with so many luxury handbags, to the point where it's like, how are you really are all these people just acquiring all these Louis Vuittons and Givenchy's and all those things? What's kind of your thought on just that market and authenticity and things like that?
I mean, to be honest, I know a few that's very big, and I've had access to them at one point. A lot. What happened lately is the globalization of the world. A lot. I mean, just a few people that I know source their stuff in Japan.
Japan.
And if you guys, if you know that their thrift stores are filled with those stuff, and over time they've built those relationships. And when Asia's economy went down, they needed to off of those products, and now shipping has become so easy. So now a lot of those are there, and I'm not saying there's no fakes. There are fakes. I mean, in every category, right? But based on that, it's there, and a lot of them, when they buy it bulk, that's the reason why they need to sell it right away. Because like you'd be thinking like you should just post it on eBay and make more money.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Like that's how I initially thinking. Like, why are you?
Yeah, like why would you sell a Louis Vuitton for $100
so
when you know
right,
it's 1,000 on eBay?
Right,
you know?
right. Or I'm always saying like you can double your money on eBay easily, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of that is your commitment to volume, and when you say yes, they're just gonna keep feeding you to a point that you have to find a way to sell them.
Gotcha.
And wholesaling them would kill your own market.
Yeah.
Right, like you're just creating more. You're just creating. So that's why like One is very kind of like interesting, right? I mean, like you said, Glenn, his supply of hats is borderline unlimited. That's why he's in. That's why he's in Whatnot, right? Because if without the like anything, right? Without the oversupply, why would you Why would you hurry up and sell things?
Yeah, of course.
Right? Which is kind of like Whatnot has became the platform for it.
So are you still doing Whatnot shows, Ken?
No, I haven't. The last Whatnot show I did was during the auction that we did for Blind Center of Nevada last year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was and we had a fallout of that kind of like partnership that we did, but also what happened is, the hype of sneakers came down really.
Yeah.
It was like 23. I was starting to see like, wow, like prices are not holding. For example, like the Nike Panda Dunks, at one point they were $350. And when I start seeing them getting sold at $200, I was like, where did that $150 go? I'm like, because at one point I was paying $200 for a Panda Dunk because I could sell it for $300, worst case $250. And at this point, a combination of oversupply of sneakers, COVID production held it up. It drove kind of like the hunger for sneakers, and now everything's inbound. Economy, stimulus money is not there anymore. There's no funding. It just, because I see a lot of this is luxury. These are things people don't need, like this is when you have extra, you buy. So that's why like I've really felt and I've still been heavy on that. And then the last kind of like few stuff that I bought are kind of like, like I couldn't put it this way. It was a combination of that and me just being burnt out. I've traveled lesser this year compared to the last 5 years of reselling.
You just took one of my questions, Ken. I was getting ready to ask you, since 2017, have you at some point, because everybody does it, have you reached burnout? And if so, what has been the base cause of it?
I would say the live selling was very taxing. Live selling compared with traveling was not it, because I think it was so worse that and I've always just worked, me and my wife, and we would have 2 part-timers usually at any given big show. The hard part was the buying. I felt that I cannot stop because the money comes in the next day, and I'm feel like a king buying a product again. Lowball everybody, right? Because you have a big chunk of money, you could get better price. And then it was just constant cycle. And it was fun, right? Because it was different. It was different than what I've done. I would actually go to say that I've kind of got bored with eBay because, I did eBay straight for some 2017 to COVID. And then 21, it was still kind of like booming for the online sales, and then 22 happens, like, oh, there's this new thing. So that was kind of like where I shifted there. but I didn't know how taxing it was for that. It was really just not, like it wasn't sustainable. I probably, I did it in 1 year. I did it for a little over a year, and it was fun. It was good. I wouldn't, if given the opportunity again, I'd probably take it on again. And it was just the constant nonstop of buying, selling. Because the fear was, if I get sick and I don't go live, I don't have money.
Yeah.
It stops, right? And then I have inventory sitting. Who's gonna live? And don't tell me it's like, oh, hire a streamer. Oh, good luck with that. Go to other shows that hire another streamer. They wouldn't even know who they're buying from.
Yeah.
Because Whatnot is a personality game. It's not, yes. I mean, even the biggest person in sneakers, Blazendary, he's still streaming. He probably does easy 6 figures a month. He's still streaming himself. And you outsource everything, right? And at that point, I was like, burnout is real. But you just have to be able to catch it before you hit rock bottom. And I'm glad that I didn't wait till rock bottom.
You kind of threw yourself a life vest out.
So Ken, speaking of burning out, what do you have diffusing in the background?
Oh yeah, that is it is it is a calming scent. I don't even know. I go with spearmint, eucalyptus. A lot of me and my wife do it when we shift work, or we shift kind of like anything that shifts. Like literally this room, like before hopping on, like 15 minutes before, tidied it up and everything and that was the last piece. And scent plays a very big role of just the feel and the mood.
Nice.
So it shifts the atmosphere, shifts the sense, change of smell. It's like, okay, it's podcast time. So I do that in everything.
For his shift.
Yeah, she does it too when she starts shipping. She puts one on and it just shifts. It's kind of like part of our switch. So okay, it's go time.
Yeah. I see that.
Stuart just organized for us for this show.
Yeah, can't you tell?
Oh, there you go.
Okay, yeah. So now I know I was joking before, but what type of mic do you use, and then what kind of camera do you use right now?
So I'm using the Rode NT2 USB mic. The only reason why I'm using I have multiple mics, but we've had to use identical mics because when I do podcasts with Anna and Glenn for Seller Club podcast, it was just easier to have the same mics for levels. So I think it's pretty good. I actually travel with this mic as well. And then the camera that I'm using is Sony A6600. With a Sigma 16mm lens.
Well, I went back and looked at our podcast from a year ago, Ken, and I've actually upgraded my microphone anyway, because the first one I did with you, it sounded like I was talking in a box. So,
hey.
But you gotta start from somewhere, right? Which you said on that podcast is 0, and I started from 0. So
yeah.
Here we are.
That's been a big part of our climb from mediocre to good, Wes.
That is a true statement. That is a true statement. But I like what Ken says, though. Everybody starts at 0, and it's all fair from there, So you just gotta keep climbing. You're gonna see some, like you said, Ken, some burnout. People face it all the time, in different forms. Obviously.
Yeah. I always tell everybody a car can only go so far without getting refueled. And we had an episode about talking about burnout, and we made this. I think it was kind of like a headline on that podcast, because my wife, when we travel to certain places, if we've been to this place multiple times, she'll know where to stop. She'll know where the nice restrooms are. She'll know where the kind of like the bigger gas stations are that you could stretch out, walk. She's marked that, and I was like, it came to my mind that when we're traveling down to south, my spot now is always Buc-Ee's. So I always say like
The bathrooms in Buc-Ee's, right?
bathrooms are immaculate, right? And
Yeah.
I've experienced that when we went to Texas, and when we went road tripping around Texas, it was always a Buc-Ee's stop. And talking about burnout, I said before you experience burnout, identify your Buc-Ee's. A lot of people don't identify their Buc-Ee's, and then next thing you know, they go to like a rest area or a gas station where there's no restroom, or there's no good coffee, or there's no, it's not safe, or the roads are crappy, or it's so far from the exit that it'll be so inconvenient to get back on the highway. And that's why I was, that's kind of like in that podcast, we talk about like before you experience running out of fuel, identify your Buc-Ee's. And so is burnout in every areas of life. Before you do that, identify who's your homie, who's your friend, who's your confidant, who's your friend that's gonna tell you what you need to hear and what you want to hear. So so I think it is definitely real.
You want to map out your path.
Yeah. As much as you can.
Stops along the way. Right.
Yeah, as much as you can.
Ken, you'll have to forgive Wes. He went back to his full-time job 2 weeks ago, so he's feeling it. So that's all the burnout.
Yeah. No.
He's been back to work for a couple of weeks.
No.
Stuart has 3 stores that he sells stuff out of. He rents the places. Have you ever thought about anything like that, or what do you think about having a resale store? I've
seen stores kind of like what the Stuart set up. Those are very interesting because in the area of fashion, you don't see that a lot, right? Like especially sneakers. One, it's probably very high theft to just put it out there like that.
Yeah, you're going to have some security for sure.
And it has to probably be
like, hey man, thanks for the shoes.
Yeah, right. And the next thing you're left with all right pairs, right?
Right.
All the left are gone. I think I would say like I always see everything as numbers, right? If the numbers make sense, do it. And a lot of times we can't make a calculations until we do it. So I don't believe that brick and mortar is dead. As a matter of fact, a lot of brick and mortars are doing good if they're if they're selling at the right price and their acquisition, there's margins to be made. But I wouldn't be too such a fan of having a high operational cost. That's the biggest thing why I fell in love with e-commerce. I didn't know e-commerce was a thing until I tried it, that I don't even have to worry about break-even cost. Now, if break-even cost is easily attainable, then go for it. And I'm assuming this doesn't have employees that you need to have full-time on, correct? Yeah. So
I'm just renting space, Ken. So
just the space.
And my wife and I have looked at like buying a building and opening, running a mall. But for the reasons you said, I mean, it's just you're tied to that.
Yeah.
You got to be there or hire somebody to be there. And the nice thing with just having booths in a store,
because they facilitate their sale, right?
I can go in there and work if I want to, but there's nothing, forcing me to. And, I can spend my time still listing on the marketplaces and doing other things. So,
and how long have you had it?
The longest booth I've had for 8 years now. And I think 8, 6, and 3 are the locations. That's how long I've been at each one. So, and it's, I run a similar margin at those that I do to my own line. It might be a little less, but it's a lot more passive too. It's
right.
You got the sourcing and going out there and placing it. There's not all the listing shipping.
Yeah. I think that's no big deal, because even stuff that you put out there, you can sell online, right? And if it sells, you just take it off online.
Well, no, I don't do that, because I would not be very well liked if I was having to call the people working the counter.
Oh, because
Hey,
yeah,
pull
because they
this
have
out of my booth every 5 minutes. But
right. Oh, that's true.
And
But
the good thing, Wes, talking about theft, not many people are stealing Beanie Babies. So
They're not going out. They're not flying out there. Ken, we've got a
I'm
whole
selling
house
some
full
Beanie
of-
Babies for Wes right now. So there you go.
Stuart's
My
actually hoping
111
someone will steal them.
yeah, at least write them off something.
He's got free boxes over at the door. He just boxes
By the
and
way,
take them.
we sold the first one in the new location, Wes. So
Oh,
that half of $5 minus the commission, the 10% commission. Don't spend it all in one place.
tape
So we
that
got to
dollar
give
to the
Johnny our
wall.
Knoxville. Johnny, go ahead and do your Knoxville visit right now. Okay.
Oh yeah,
Because,
guys, be sure to visit Knoxville.com.
it's an unsponsored thing anyway.
nice.
But yeah, so Ken, if you come down through Knoxville, Tennessee, you need to get over there and see Stuart's little places and pick up a Beanie Baby or two as a memento for you. And there's a couple Buc-Ee'S near our place too. So
there is. Yeah. I think I know
map that
where
out.
one is.
Yeah.
Is it like Richmond? Right? There's one in Richmond.
Richmond, Kentucky, there is one there,
Yeah.
but the one's
There's
close
one
to
in
us is
Crossville.
Sevierville, which is the busiest
Yeah,
Buc-Ee's in the
Sevierville.
country. And
What is it? What's the name?
Sevierville, it's
Sevierville,
Okay.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
You head on to Dollywood.
The Richmond is the new one close to me, and that's when I go down to Atlanta, I hit that up.
What's
The one
funny
in
with Buc-Ee's
Sevierville.
What's funny with Buc-Ee's right now is every new Buc-Ee's is the largest Buc-Ee's for like a month, and then they open the new one, and they must put like 1 extra square foot, and like everyone.
It's smart. Hey, whoever's doing their marketing, doing it well, because somebody's gonna pick it up. The newest Buc-Ee's is not the biggest Buc-Ee's is in your town, and every town will have a biggest Buc-Ee's.
And they pay their employees handsomely too.
Yeah,
Oh,
really
gosh.
good. Yeah, if I was a reseller, I'd work there.
On the
We need to get our
surface,
own Buc-Ee's going.
if you were to tell somebody, we're going to start a gas station and people are going to come in and buy products with our logo on it, that just sounds like such a crazy idea.
You know what? You know what? Like reminds me of it. Just kind of like looking, because coming here, right, visiting here, Cracker Barrel was our always stop. And I remember toys because my parents would bring me Cracker Barrel toys. I think that's what Buc-Ee's is doing. It's a Cracker Barrel for gas station.
Yeah.
Yeah, in some ways, although, Cracker Barrel was more selling a country lifestyle and not necessarily selling products that were branded Cracker Barrel. It's just incredible to me.
Oh, that is true. Yeah.
It's done
That is
so
true.
well, just
They branded everything, right?
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
mean, people will go nuts to go in there. And there'll be shopping cart full of just stuff with that beaver on it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
that's-
Beaver. Actually, some of their products that are not branded Buc-Ee's is under Buc-Ee's Corporation. I'm a fan of like pH water, and I got pH water there, and I was like, "Oh, this is good. We need to buy this." I start searching online. It's their own brand, but it's a different name. So it'd be surprising to pretty much, besides Coke products or some of those big brands, it might be their own.
So Kim, what do you pick up to eat when you're at Buc-Ee's? You go for the brisket, or what do you grab?
Well, I've had my brisket run already, right? But because that was kind of like their staple. Now I'm about their wrap or burrito, the different burritos that they have. So, and their breakfast sandwiches is pretty good too.
Said you heard it here first.
Hey, there you go. And you gotta have the hot pecans. The honey roasted pecans. You always gotta have it.
Ken
And
has spoken.
we might
That
just
is-
have to email
that is it.
Buc-Ee's for a sponsorship now or something.
Wes, delete all the previous footage and just make this podcast about the Buc-Ee's.
What is speak
Yeah, this
about
is-
Buc-Ee's?
Yeah.
Well, I'll hold this part as a special section to it all.
Yeah.
Well, Ken, this has been a lot of fun, my friend. We don't
awesome.
want to keep you, but we really do appreciate you sharing your story and diving into some other things as
Sure.
far as the reselling world. But again, thank you so much for coming into the Finders Flippers Resell Podcast.
Motivated to go find some books that don't have pictures in them now. So,
It's always fun. It's always fun to talk with like-minded people that in the reselling space, think all of us have sold something on eBay and still selling on eBay, and just keep going at it, and find your Buc-Ee'S. Don't burn out.
I love that. I love that.
Now,
Find your Buc-Ee'S.
where can people find you, Ken? What are your different social media?
Yeah, so currently I'm mainly on Instagram. Follow me on the Hustlebee on Instagram. Like and drop a comment there. I always respond to DMs. I mean, that's how I met Wes, through just DMs. And also our podcast, Seller Club Podcast. Me, Glenn, and Anna have been doing podcasts for 11 months now. So it's been going. So that's where we can find me. Thank you. I appreciate it. And let's circle back again later down the road.
We'll do it. Appreciate it.
All right, go.
Thanks,
Have a good
Ken.
night, guys.
Have a great evening.
Another great episode. A big thank you to the Hustlebee for joining us. As he mentioned, go check him out on Instagram, and I know he's got a big store on eBay as well. Appreciate everybody subscribed over the last couple of weeks. We keep inching ever closer to that magic 200 number when we'll do our next live. So keep the subscriptions coming in, and make sure you like the video. And man, it's going to be hard to top the last 3 weeks.